Susan Dominus from the New York Times Magazine has followed two freshman Democratic congresswomen from two different factions in the party for the past year. Her piece, called High Hope and High Drama, shows how Virginia's Abigail Spanberger and Ayanna Pressley of Massachusetts navigated Washington and clashed with their own party. And Susan joins me now to discuss what she found. Susan, thank you so much for being here. This was a really deep dive, yes. a fascinating dive into how it is that these two women sort of engaged with first each other and then other lawmakers on Capitol Hill. And I want to start there because early on in your piece, you showed a tweet from Congresswoman Spanberger, and we have it, and we want to show our viewers. This is of her and Congresswoman Pressley. This is just weeks after they were elected, and you could almost sort of feel the hope and anticipation in that picture as you see the two of them beaming there in that tweet. How has that high from 2018 changed over the past year?
I think that there's been a little bit of a reality check in their lives, in the sense that they both are doing the best that they can to represent their constituents, but their constituents are very different. And Ayanna Pressley comes from a heavily immigrant, heavily minority district in the Boston area. And Congresswoman Spanberger represents a district that is very pro-Trump and has different concerns. And as they each try to best represent the people who elected them, those values are occasionally going to clash in ways that are frustrating to each of them, I think.
And you write a lot about how they have both grappled with the very public way that their work has been viewed, and in their opinion, sometimes misconstrued their intentions. How have their frustrations regarding that, especially when you look at Ayanna Pressley and her membership in the quote-unquote squad, and Abigail Spanberger's view of that, sort of the other side of the coin, how has that all played out over the course of the past year?
Well, I think that Congresswoman Pressley is extremely proud of her friendship with the squad. Mm-hmm. She feels great affection and warmth for those women. They have a lot of, as she would put it, a lot of shared experiences. At the same time, I think that she maybe was surprised when people made assumptions about her based on her closeness to that group, or that simply by having made that alliance, you're assumed to endorse everything that happens there. And some of that's been kind of controversial. So I think that came as a surprise to her. And I think that for Congresswoman Spanberger, you know, the squad gets so much attention, sometimes through no fault of their own. Mm-hmm. I mean, if President Trump tweets an angry tweet at them, that's going to generate a lot of press, especially when it's as vitriolic as some of his tweets were. Mm-hmm. And then I think for Congresswoman Spanberger, there's a question of how does the party then respond? Does the party respond in a way that continues to create distraction from other issues that more moderate Democrats want to put forward? That's sort of the tension that she was, I think, dealing with.
So they are from such different parts of the Democratic Party here. And I wonder what you learned about how House Speaker Nancy Pelosi tries to kind of deal with them and some of the issues that you spell out in this piece that arose along the way over the past year.
Well, it's interesting. So the moderates who were elected from Trump-friendly districts were really the majority makers. They're what allowed the House to retake the majority. And so, you know, for most of the year, a lot of those people who come from Trump-friendly districts have been the ones saying, this is not impeachment worthy. Let's hold back on impeachment. Don't force me to say anything. I don't want to say the I word, mm-hmm. you know, because it's not something that the people back home are ready for. Mm-hmm. And I won by a small margin if you were Abigail Spanberger. So let's just lay low on that. I think there were a lot of people in the party who kind of resented the hold that the moderates had, it seemed to them, mm-hmm. on Speaker Pelosi. And then I think there was this concern at a certain point, even for the speaker, that the squad was maybe starting to define too much of the issues of the party, and that the party as a whole was starting to look more progressive than maybe its representation actually would suggest. Mm-hmm. And so there was a moment in July when she gave an interview to Maureen Dowd in which, whether she was planning it or not, you know, unclear, but she certainly said, look, that, you know, they rendered themselves irrelevant, as Maureen Dowd put it. And so it seemed like a real deliberate attempt at maybe putting some distance between her and the party and the squad.
So your piece ends with the start of the impeachment inquiry, and I wonder how you anticipate the dynamics between Congresswoman Pressley and Congresswoman Spanberger changing as this impeachment inquiry moves forward.
I mean, I think that's hard to predict, actually, because, and I think they do have hopes to work together, and both of them are deeply collaborative people. But I think there's some reassurance that the impeachment is moving on, the process is moving on a track that both of them support, that they want it to be really clear, they want it to have a lot of integrity. I think they both feel comfortable with that. I think the concern of the moderates was that the impeachment not become an incredibly broad issue that brought everything in and confused and muddied the waters, such that their constituents would start to sort of feel mistrust about the whole process.
So one of the things I love, too, is that you kind of peeled back the curtain a little bit and told us a little bit about where your vantage point was as someone who doesn't normally cover Congress, trying to cover these two women. Tell us what some of your takeaways were, and also, how did you come to choose these two women in particular?
Well, first of all, I'll say I really did not know that either of them was going to play such a fateful role in the rollout of this, term of Congress. So to some degree, I got a little bit fortunate that way. I chose them because the first time I interviewed Congresswoman Spanberger, she told me a great story about when she was in the CIA, strapping cash to her waist and putting on a maternity shirt. And she told a great story. She was very funny. And I wanted, if I was going to spend a year in someone's company, she seemed like a great person to just hang around. But then I also knew that I wanted somebody who was very different. So if Congresswoman Spanberger was from a not safe district, if her reelection was not certain, I wanted somebody who had a very safe vantage point. And the first time I met Congresswoman Pressley, she was so open and so sort of intimate in the way she talked about her life. And also her staff was a tremendous amount of fun. And I just thought, these are strong personalities. They're interesting people with a lot of integrity. And I think it would be pretty fascinating to see what happens. But again, I did not know that each of them would have such intense and high-profile experiences.
Is it clear to you at this point, 1 year in, what impact these two congresswomen might have?
What impact they might have. On what exactly, I guess, is the question.
When you talk about, for instance, the current struggle within the Democratic Party, right, with these two factions which you lay out in the representation of each of these individuals, there is a conversation happening, as you point out, in this very, very deep dive behind closed doors that a lot of us weren't necessarily privy to, and how deep those divisions within the Democratic Party are. So on that point, is it clear what impact each of these women will have? Because they clearly both have powerful voices within their party.
I mean, I think that Congresswoman Pressley, as part of the squad, has already had an impact on even less Congress, maybe sort of the conversation that's happening among the Democrats who are vying, for the presidency. So they, I would say that the squad has definitely pulled that conversation very far to the left. And, and obviously Congresswoman Pressley is serving as a co-campaign chair now for Senator Warren in her campaign. So it's going to be exciting to see how much she influences that. I think that could be a really powerful role for her. And as for Congresswoman Spanberger, I think she's still building alliances and allegiances and is trying to work in a bipartisan way. There's not a lot of room for that. I think that's been disappointing for her, and she's going to keep trying to forge that path.
It'll be fascinating to watch both these women here moving forward. Susan, Dominus, Susan, thank you so much for stopping by.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.